Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the stories. Number the 13th monitor. I wasn't always afraid of the dark. In fact, for the first 6 months working night security at Meridian Office Complex, I found comfort in those quiet hours between midnight and dawn. The stillness, the solitude, the simplicity of my routine, that was before I noticed the 13th monitor. My name is Daniel Mercer, and until 3 weeks ago my job was straightforward. I'd arrive at 11 p.m., relieve the evening guard, and settle into the basement security office for my 8-hour shift. The building itself was nothing special, 12 floors of corporate offices, conference rooms, and cubicles. During the day, nearly 1,000 employees filled these spaces. At night, it was just me, the occasional cleaner, and the gentle hum of the surveillance system. The security office was small but efficient. A desk, my chair, a mini fridge, and the wall of monitors, 12 screens that displayed feeds from the building's 52 cameras on a rotating basis. I knew the system well. Each monitor cycled through a specific set of cameras every 30 seconds. Predictable, reliable, safe. Until the night I counted 13. It was a Tuesday, just after 2 a.m. I was halfway through my shift and my second cup of coffee when something made me look up from my crossword puzzle. Nothing specific triggered it, just that strange sixth sense that someone's watching you. I scanned the monitors out of habit, expecting to see nothing but empty hallways and dark offices. That's when I noticed it. A monitor that shouldn't exist, wedged between screens 8 and 9. The image it displayed wasn't from any part of the building I recognized, just a dark corridor with what looked like filing cabinets lining one wall. The timestamp read 2:17, matching the current time, but the camera designation read SUB-3CA-M4. We didn't have a sub-level 3. Meridian only had 2 basement levels, the parking garage and the maintenance floor where my security office was located. I blinked hard, assuming fatigue was playing tricks on me. When I opened my eyes, the monitor was gone. 12 screens, just as there should be. I laughed it off. Midnight shift does strange things to your mind. I made a note in the log anyway. Possible monitor glitch at 217. System check recommended. The next night I arrived early. I wanted to take a closer look at the surveillance system before my shift started. Jim, the evening guard, raised an eyebrow when I asked about the monitors. 12 screens, 52 cameras, same as always, he said, gathering his things. Why, just thought I saw something weird last night, probably nothing. Jim paused at the door. Word of advice, Danny. Don't go looking for things to break the monotony. Boring is good in this job. He tapped his temple. Keeps you sane. I nodded, but as soon as he left, I began examining the monitor wall. Everything looked normal. 12 screens mounted in a 4x3 grid, each cycling through its designated cameras. I even counted the feeds several times, tracking each camera's rotation pattern. Everything matched the system specifications. My shift passed uneventfully until 2:17 a.m. I was watching the clock this time, half expecting something to happen, half convinced I'd imagined the whole thing. As the digital display ticked over to 2:17, I felt a chill pass through the small office. The fluorescent lights flickered once, and there it was again, the 13th monitor displaying the same unfamiliar corridor. Only this time there was movement. At the far end of the hallway, barely visible in the dim light, a door opened. I leaned forward, squinting at the screen. Someone stepped into the corridor, a tall figure in what looked like a maintenance uniform. They stood motionless for several seconds, then slowly turned toward the camera. The feed cut out before I could see their face. The monitor disappeared, and I was staring at 12 screens again. My heart was racing. I grabbed the logbook and wrote down what I'd seen, then pulled out my phone to check the time. 2:18 a.m. The whole incident had lasted less than a minute. I spent the rest of my shift checking and rechecking the building schematics. According to the plans, Meridian had 2 basement levels and 12 above-ground floors. No sub-level 3, no corridor matching what I'd seen. I even called my supervisor, Marcus, and left a voicemail about the monitor anomaly, careful to frame it as a technical issue rather than something stranger. Marcus called back the next morning as I was leaving. Checked with it, he said, sounding irritated at being bothered. Systems working normally, 12 monitors, 52 cameras. If you're seeing things, Mercer, maybe you need more sleep. I'm not seeing things, I insisted. There was definitely a 13th monitor at exactly 2:17 a.m. It showed a corridor I've never seen before. Look, Marcus sighed, the building's old. Maybe you saw footage from one of the cameras before the East Wing renovation. System might have a hiccup in its archive retrieval. I'll have it run a deeper diagnostic. I wanted to believe him. A technical glitch made sense. It was rational, explainable, but it didn't account for the timestamp matching the current time or the way the monitor physically appeared between 2 others. That night I came prepared. I brought a digital camera from home, not just my phone, and set it up on a tripod facing the monitor wall. If the 13th screen appeared again, I'd have proof. The first few hours of my shift crawled by. I found myself checking the clock every few minutes as 2 a.m. approached. At 2:10, I started the camera recording and sat back, eyes fixed on the space between monitors 8 and 9. 2:17 a.m. arrived, nothing happened. I waited tense until 2:20 before accepting that whatever I'd seen wasn't going to appear. Frustrated, I stopped the recording and rewound it to check anyway. That's when I felt my blood turn to ice. On the camera's display, clear as day, was the 13th monitor. It had appeared, just not where I was looking. It was between monitors 3 and 4, showing not the corridor this time, but what looked like an office. A desk lamp cast a yellow glow over stacks of files. Seated at the desk, back to the camera, was a figure in a dark suit. As I watched the recording, the figure slowly swiveled in their chair. Just as they were about to face the camera, the monitor disappeared from the footage. I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, but my camera had captured it perfectly. I immediately checked the actual monitors. 12 screens showing exactly what they should. I rewound my camera again, watching the phantom monitor appear and disappear. There was no denying it now. Something impossible was happening in the Meridian security office. I didn't tell Marcus about the recording. Instead, I spent my day off researching the building's history. Meridian was constructed in 1982 on the site of an older structure, the Harmon Research Facility, which had been demolished after a fire in 1978. The details were sparse, but I found mentions of structural additions and specialized containment areas in the old building permits. When I returned for my next shift, I brought a new tool, an EMF meter I'd ordered online. If there was some kind of electromagnetic anomaly causing the monitor glitch, this might detect it. Jim gave me a strange look when he saw me setting up my equipment. "Getting serious about ghost hunting, Danny," I forced a laugh. "Just trying to figure out that monitor glitch." He shook his head. "Marcus told me about that, said you were seeing things." "I have proof now," I said, perhaps too defensively. Jim's expression softened. "Look, this job can mess with your head. The isolation, the weird hours, maybe take some vacation days." I assured him I was fine, and he left with a concerned backward glance. That night, I was determined to understand what was happening. I set up my camera, positioned the EMF meter near the monitor wall, and waited. As 2 a.m. approached, the meter began to show elevated readings. By 2:15, it was spiking erratically. At exactly 2:17, the 13th monitor appeared, this time between screens 10 and 11. The EMF meter went wild, then died completely, its battery drained. The monitor showed a laboratory of some kind. Scientific equipment lined the walls, and in the center was what looked like an operating table. A sheet covered what was unmistakably a human form. At the head of the table stood 3 figures in lab coats, their backs to the camera. As I watched, frozen, one of the figures turned slightly. Though I couldn't see their face clearly, they seemed to be looking directly at the camera, at me. They raised a hand, beckoning. Then all the monitors went black. Not just the 13th, all of them. The room plunged into darkness, save for the red emergency light above the door. I fumbled for my flashlight, heart pounding. When the monitors came back online 30 seconds later, there were 12 again. But something had changed. Each screen now displayed the same image, the laboratory I'd just seen, but from different angles. 12 views of a room that shouldn't exist. And in each feed, the 3 figures were now facing the cameras, heads tilted as if studying me. I backed away from the desk, knocking over my chair. This wasn't a glitch. This was something else entirely. The images held for exactly 1 minute before the system reset itself. The normal camera rotation resumed as if nothing had happened. I checked my digital camera. It had captured everything. I couldn't stay in that room. I grabbed my phone and the camera and stepped into the hallway, trying to calm my racing thoughts. This was beyond a technical malfunction. Either I was losing my mind, or something truly unexplainable was occurring at Meridian. I decided to do something I'd never done in 6 months of employment: leave my post to explore the building. I needed to see the physical spaces, confirm what was real and what wasn't. I started with the parking garage, then methodically worked my way through the maintenance level. Everything matched the building plans exactly, until I found the door. It was tucked away in a service corridor behind the boiler room, a heavy metal door with no markings except a faded authorized personnel only sign. According to the building schematics, this should have been a storage closet, but the door had a keycard reader and a numerical keypad, security measures far beyond what a closet would require. My security badge wouldn't open it. Neither would any of the master keys on my ring. I stood there, staring at this impossible door when my phone chimed. A text from an unknown number, SUB-3 code. 21,778. I nearly dropped the phone. The timestamp on the message was 2:17 a.m., exactly the time when the 13th monitor appeared. The sender's number was just zeros. Logic told me to walk away, to call Marcus or the police, but a deeper part of me needed answers. With trembling fingers, I entered the code into the keypad. The door unlocked with a heavy click. Beyond it was a concrete stairwell leading down, a level that shouldn't exist. The air that rushed out was cold and stale, carrying a faint antiseptic smell. My flashlight beam disappeared into the darkness below. I took a single step down, then stopped. What was I doing? This was madness. I retreated, pulling the door shut behind me, hearing it lock automatically. Back in the familiar corridor, I leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. When I returned to the security office, all was normal, 12 monitors showing their regular feeds. But now I knew the 13th monitor wasn't a glitch. It was showing me something real, something hidden beneath Meridian. I spent the rest of my shift reviewing the footage I'd captured, making notes of everything I'd seen. When Jim arrived to relieve me at 7 a.m., I barely acknowledged him. My mind was racing with possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. That day, instead of going home to sleep, I went to the public library. I needed to learn more about the Harmon Research Facility. The librarian directed me to their local history archives, where I found several newspaper articles about the 1978 fire. What I read chilled me to the bone. The official story was that the fire started in an electrical room and spread quickly through the building. 7 researchers died, unable to escape the lower levels, but there were inconsistencies in the reports. Witnesses described hearing explosions before seeing flames. First responders noted unusual security measures that hampered rescue efforts. And most disturbing of all, several articles mentioned rumors of unauthorized experiments and ethical violations that had plagued Harmon in its final years. One small article, dated 3 weeks before the fire, reported that a whistleblower from Harmon had contacted a journalist with claims of inhumane research practices and containment breaches. The whistleblower, identified only as Dr. M, was scheduled for an interview that never happened. The journalist found their source had resigned unexpectedly and left town. The fire occurred exactly 1 month later, on February 17, 1978, 2-17-78. The code that had unlocked the door. I left the library with a growing sense of dread. Whatever had happened at Harmon hadn't ended with the fire. Somehow it was still reaching out, using the surveillance system to communicate. But why me? And why now, after all these years? I returned to work that night with a plan. I would document everything that happened at 2:17 a.m., then take my evidence to Marcus, no, higher than Marcus, to the building owners if necessary. Someone had to know about Sublevel 3 and what it contained. As midnight approached, I methodically checked my equipment. Camera recording, EMF meter active, phone fully charged. I'd even brought a small digital voice recorder, placing it near the monitors. At 2:15 a.m., the EMF meter began registering activity. By 2:16, the office lights were flickering. I stood ready, camera in hand, focused on the monitor wall. 2:17 a.m. The 13th monitor appeared, but this time something was different. All the monitors changed simultaneously, each showing a different part of Sublevel 3. It was as if the entire surveillance system had been hijacked. The images were clearer now, more detailed. I could see laboratories, offices, containment rooms with reinforced doors. And people, researchers in lab coats, security personnel in vintage uniforms, subjects in hospital gowns. They moved through these spaces as if going about routine activities, unaware they were being observed, except for one. On the central monitor, the 13th, a man stood directly facing the camera. He wore a lab coat with a badge that read Dr. Mercer, my surname. He had my father's eyes, my grandfather's jawline. A face that could have been mine in 20 years. He held up a file with a familiar name on the tab, Daniel Mercer, my file. The doctor's lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear. I instinctively reached for the volume control, but before I could touch it, my voice recorder emitted a burst of static, followed by a clear voice. Subject shows promising genetic markers. Surveillance protocol initiated to monitor developmental progression. Termination authorized if anomalous behaviors manifest. His voice was eerily similar to my own. Phase 1 complete. Subject has established contact. Proceed with integration protocol. The monitors flickered, and suddenly I was looking at myself, not my reflection, but surveillance footage of me in the security office, from angles that didn't match any of our cameras. Footage of me sleeping in my apartment, driving my car, meeting friends for dinner last week. They had been watching me my entire life. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't discovering Sublevel 3, it was revealing itself to me, drawing me in, and I had followed its breadcrumbs exactly as intended. The images changed again. Now each monitor showed the same metal door I'd found earlier from different angles and times. In one feed it was brand new, the sign freshly painted. In another it was charred and blackened, surrounded by fire damage. In a third it was as I'd seen it hours ago. On the 13th monitor the door stood open, revealing the stairwell beyond. At the bottom a light glowed invitingly. My phone chimed with another text: integration protocol initiated. Return to access point. The monitors went dark, then reset to their normal feeds. 12 screens showing empty offices and corridors. No trace of what I'd witnessed except in my recordings. I sat motionless, trying to process what I'd seen. The implications were staggering. Harmon research hadn't been destroyed, parts of it had been preserved, hidden beneath Meridian. And they had been monitoring me, perhaps my entire family, for generations. But why? What were the genetic markers they'd mentioned? What anomalous behaviors were they watching for? I reviewed my recordings, confirming I hadn't imagined it all. The evidence was clear, undeniable. I had to tell someone, had to expose what was happening beneath Meridian. I tried calling Marcus, but the call wouldn't connect. My phone showed full signal, but couldn't dial out. I tried the landline on my desk, dead. Even my attempt to email the video files to myself failed. I was being isolated. That's when I noticed the monitors had stopped cycling through their feeds. All 12 screens now showed the same image, the corridor leading to my security office. From 12 different angles, I could see a figure approaching. Tall, dressed in a maintenance uniform, the same figure I'd glimpsed on the first night. I looked toward the office door. The handle was turning slowly. In that moment, I made my decision. I grabbed my phone and camera and fled through the emergency exit at the back of the office. The alarm should have sounded, but the building remained silent. I ran through the maintenance level, following the path I'd taken earlier, driven by a certainty I couldn't explain. I knew where I needed to go. The metal door was waiting for me just as I'd left it. The keypad glowed green, already unlocked. Beyond it, the stairwell descended into darkness, but now I could see a faint light at the bottom, just as the monitor had shown. I should have run the other way, should have left the building, driven to the police station, shown them my evidence. But something was pulling me forward, curiosity, destiny, or something embedded in those genetic markers Dr. Mercer had mentioned. I started down the stairs, counting the steps: 21, 22, 23. The air grew colder, the antiseptic smell stronger. At the bottom, 47 steps in total. A corridor stretched before me. The corridor from the 13th monitor. Filing cabinets lined one wall, just as I'd seen. The lights flickered overhead, illuminating the space in pulses. At the far end stood a figure in a lab coat. Even at this distance, I recognized the face. My face, aged and weathered, but unmistakably mine. Dr. Mercer smiled, gesturing toward an open door beside him. "Welcome home, Daniel," he called, his voice echoing in the concrete passage. "We've been waiting for you to find your way back." "What is this place?" I demanded, stopping halfway down the corridor. "Who are you?" "You know who I am," he replied calmly. "Just as you know what this place is. The memories are there, buried but not erased. We can help you recover them." "I've never been here before," he chuckled. "Not in this iteration, perhaps, but your genetic memory knows these halls. It's what drew you to take this job, what made you notice the 13th monitor when others would have dismissed it." I took a step backward. "You've been watching me, we've been waiting," he corrected, "for you to be ready, for the cycle to complete itself." He gestured again toward the open door. "Come, see what you've forgotten." Against every rational instinct, I moved forward. The pull was irresistible now, like a current dragging me toward some inevitable conclusion. As I approached, I could see that Dr. Mercer's lab coat was singed at the edges, his hands scarred with old burn marks. "The fire," I said. "You survived it, some of us did, others," he shrugged. "Time works differently here. Death is less permanent than we once believed." He stepped aside as I reached the doorway. Beyond was a laboratory, the same one I'd seen on the monitors. Scientific equipment lined the walls, and in the center stood the operating table with its sheet-covered form. "What's under there?" I whispered, though I feared I already knew. "The original," Dr. Mercer said simply. "The template from which you were derived, subject 0 of Project Recursion." He pulled back the sheet. The face that stared up at the ceiling, eyes open but unseeing, was mine, not aged like the doctor's, but exactly as I appeared now. Every detail perfect, down to the small scar above my right eyebrow from a childhood fall. "That's not possible," I breathed, backing away. "I'm real, I have memories, a life, implanted," Dr. Mercer cut in, "constructed. Each iteration more refined than the last." He tapped his temple. "Your memories of childhood, family vacations, first heartbreak, all programmed based on optimal psychological development models." "No," I shook my head violently. "My parents, handlers, observers, tasked with monitoring your development in a controlled environment." My world was collapsing around me. If what he said was true, nothing in my life had been real. I was an experiment, a copy of a copy, designed for some purpose I couldn't comprehend. Why? I demanded. Why create me at all? Dr. Mercer's expression softened. Because we needed to understand what went wrong with the original. Why he developed anomalies, abilities that threatened containment. By creating controlled iterations, we could isolate the variables, identify the trigger points. He stepped closer. You're the 13th, Daniel. And you're showing the same patterns he did just before the breach. What breach? My voice sounded distant, even to myself. The fire wasn't an accident, it was containment protocol. Subject Zero manifested abilities we couldn't control, psychokinetic, telepathic. He reached into the surveillance system, used it to extend his consciousness throughout the facility. Dr. Mercer's voice took on a reverent quality. He became something more than human, and now so are you. As if responding to his words, the lights flickered more intensely. Equipment around the lab began to vibrate. I felt something building inside me, a pressure behind my eyes, a humming in my bones. You feel it, don't you? Dr. Mercer watched me intently. The connection forming, the boundaries dissolving. I did feel it. Suddenly I could sense the surveillance cameras throughout the building, 52 points of awareness extending my consciousness. I could see myself from multiple angles simultaneously, could perceive the empty offices above, the sleeping city beyond. This is what happened before the fire, I said, understanding dawning. He lost control. He transcended control, Dr. Mercer corrected, and now we're ready to harness that transcendence properly. The body on the table, my body, twitched suddenly. Its eyes, previously staring blankly, focused on me. Its lips moved, forming words I heard not with my ears but directly in my mind. We are the same. We have always been the same. The pressure in my head intensified. The room began to distort around me, reality bending like an image on a damaged screen. Through the surveillance system, I could see the maintenance level, the security office where all of this began. The figure in the maintenance uniform was there, watching the monitors, watching me, and I recognized him now. Another iteration, another me. What happens now? I asked, though I feared I knew the answer. Dr. Mercer smiled sadly. Integration, the cycle completes itself. He nodded toward the body on the table. He's been waiting for a new vessel, one that's learned to navigate the boundaries between realities. The body, the original, sat up suddenly, its movements jerky and unnatural. Its eyes never left mine as it swung its legs over the edge of the table. No, I backed toward the door. I won't let you. It's already happening, Daniel. You opened the door, you established the connection. The 13th monitor was the bridge, and you crossed it willingly. I turned to flee, but the corridor outside had changed. It now stretched impossibly long, the exit nowhere in sight. The filing cabinets along the wall had transformed into monitors, hundreds of them, each showing a different version of me at different points in time. Living, dying, being reborn in an endless cycle. The original was behind me now. I could feel its presence like a cold shadow. When it spoke, its voice was mine but hollow, echoing as if from a great distance. We need to be whole again. Its hand touched my shoulder, and reality fractured completely. I was everywhere at once, in the lab, in the security office, in my apartment, in places I'd never seen before. Past, present, and possible futures collided in my consciousness. Through the chaos, one image stabilized. The security office at 2:17 a.m. I was sitting at the desk, noticing the 13th monitor for the first time. But now I understood what it really was, not a glitch or a ghost, but a window. A breach in the walls between iterations. The original's consciousness was flowing into me, memories flooding my mind, the experiments, the containment, the desperate attempt to escape that had triggered the fire. The creation of copies, each designed to be more stable, more controllable. The patient wait for one that could bridge the gap between realities without causing collapse. Me, the 13th. As our minds merged, I felt myself being pulled back to the security office, back to that first moment of awareness. The cycle was resetting, but this time with a difference. This time I would remember. I found myself sitting at the desk, staring at the wall of monitors, 12 screens showing empty offices and corridors, but I knew what was coming. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the 13th monitor would appear, and I would notice it, just as I was meant to. Only now I understood what it was showing me, not some hidden level beneath the building, but the truth beneath my existence. The original reaching out across iterations, seeking completion. The lights flickered. The 13th monitor appeared, and this time when I looked into it, I saw myself looking back, not from a mysterious corridor, but from this same office in a different time. The original and the copy, observer and observed, finally recognizing each other across the divide. I raised my hand to the screen. My reflection did the same. The cycle was complete. The integration had begun. And somewhere in the building, a door that shouldn't exist waited to be opened once again.